Last week, we considered the need for attunement with God, with the gurus, with the wisdom of others, until we make that wisdom our own. There is a strong, in fact, valid belief nowadays in the need for standing on one's own feet rather than depending weakly on others to carry us by their strengths. Swami Kriyananda was once asked, "What is the best yoga posture?" "That one," he replied, "which sets you squarely on your own 2 feet." Our strength must come from within. If that strength comes from the ego, however, instead of from soul consciousness, it is like a guitar string with its sounding board, without its sounding board, apologies. The notes it emits will be thin and feeble. Our strength must come from within, but must be coupled with recognition of our inner link with broader and higher realities. The Bhagavad Gita says in the 10th chapter, "Everyone in this world whose life is glorious or prosperous or powerful, know that his achievement is but a little spark from the great sun of my effulgence." Jesus, in talking to his disciples, emphasized also the power of attunement with his own consciousness as a ray of the divine, for this ray had descended already through him in response to their devotion. It was a sign that God was already listening to them with receptive attention and did not require to be wooed in that way any longer. In the passage preceding the one that we read last week, Jesus said, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit, he taketh away, and every branch that beareth fruit, he purgeth it, and it may bring forth more fruit. Now ye are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine, no more can ye, except ye abide in me." This was the meaning of Paramhansa Yogananda's counsel also, when speaking more intimately to the disciples of the need for attunement with him. Thus, through holy scriptures, God has spoken to mankind. Om. 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 I have to start with a little funny story from last week, and it was more a visual from my perspective. But at the end of last week's Sunday service, we had a satsang, and we were chatting, and a dear devotee who's now doing a trip around India, Ashwin, asked a really, really pertinent question, which was, "So I'm a busy person, and he is his dad, and he's traveling around India, but he runs a law firm for immigration in Australia and in India. And, he works lots of hours and is quite busy." And he asked the question, well, how do I bring, the teachings, or how do I live when I'm that busy? Like, how do I bring that in? And I think I remember the response, something along the lines of, well, we have to actually, Ashwin is a very outgoing, joyous, he's got lots of energy, and he's got amazing magnetism. And I said, you bring that into your work. I mean, that's what makes you successful. That's what brings your ability to have abundance. He has an office in Victoria, and I believe he's got one in India, and he has this opportunity to travel with his family. So, his energy has created that. But the difference being is if he takes that energy, or he takes what he's been given and believes that he is the doer. And so the simple response to all, how do we live? It's that God is the doer in all things. It's that at the end of the day, or at the end of his success, at the end of his failures, he's been, he is that channel that has allowed that success, or God to succeed through him. And it's kind of really pertinent in relation to this week's topic of self-reliance versus self-reliance. And it comes back to, well, there's two parts to it. And last week we discussed also that we have this soul, and outside of the soul we have these vrittis, or these attachments to who we believe we are. And it's the same this week. We have all these identifications that we have, and if we identify them, we go on this roller coaster of these ups and downs. So for every success, in the laws which we talk, abide in, we have success, and we have to at some point have failure. If we have these, if we're in this worldly essence, everything has its ups and downs. And why I brought that up is I had this amazing image when I was thinking about it this morning. Do you guys remember those? They're like a paddle bat. They're a timber paddle bat, and they've got the elastic band attached to the ball, and you just sit there. They're like this, ping, 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 and you do all these amazing things, and this ball goes up and down. And I just imagined, it sounds horrible, but I imagined Ashwin's poor little face going up and down, up and down, up and down. And it made me laugh because we're all doing it. And we've heard Swami, and I think Kalamali's brought it up before about the fact that, we're on this train ride, and it's where we sit on the train is, how we can be. And it's similar to that image of this bat. We can either be at the bat watching the ball go up and down, or we can be the ball going up and down, being beat about every day. And, to me, it's a beautiful analogy of this week's topic. We can have this self-reliance and feel that we're running and controlling the show and attached to the strings and go up and down, up and down, up and down. Or we can actually be the bat, the hand. And if you like a beautiful visual, it could be the hand of the divine, just watching this string going up and down and having this up and down motion as we go along. So I don't know if you guys, but I thought that was quite funny, just watching, little poor Ashwin's face going up and down on the ball as you go about life. And I can imagine all of our faces now just going up and down as we live in this world. So yeah, it's kind of an amazing thing. And Yogananda spoke about the fact, and there's two elements. He described our existence as like a gas barbecue. So, there's this gas that has all these little outlets, and we're all those little outlets. And then as they're lit, you can imagine, some have been out in the sun, some have been out in the rain. Some are a little clogged so that the flame's not so big. Some are clean and open and have, the closest to this flame, and they shoot up and down. You can imagine each one of us throwing our little characters in. We can sprinkle some magic dust here and be pink, and we can do some more over here that are blue, whatever we like. And so individually we have this flame going up and down in different ways, but ultimately our source all comes from the one thing. It's the gas, or the part that lights each one of these flames. And it's another visual explanation of how we're all connected. We all have this connection within us, and that flame is always burning within us. And Swami used to talk about in, I think, several of his books, but talks about that Yogananda had this ability to already understand or think who, somebody else's thoughts, and they may not have even been in their room. They could have been across the country, their actions, their thoughts. And, it's kind of interesting when you think about it, but it makes sense that if Yogananda is connected to that source, he has access to everything. If you think about that gas flame and that ability to be attached and be inward, then he has that ability to have that gas flame always. And it's kind of an interesting thing. We are always connected, and when we're living our life, we have that choice to be out in those flames and out making ourselves look amazing, out being on that ball, going up and down, up and down, up and down. But at some point in our lives, we all just say, I've had enough. I've actually had enough. And most of us who are on this path, and obviously those that are, you know, on this self-realization path, have come to that conclusion. We don't want to be that ball going up and down. We want to be inward. We want to be at that hand, or we want to be at the gas source, so that we're just watchers of how things up and go up and down. And that's kind of the essence of this talk that we have this week on the self-reliance versus self-reliance. It gives us that ability to focus in on who we are and being inward. And one of the amazing tools that we talk about is this super consciousness, and the fact that we can live in this super consciousness. And we did this amazing affirmation, and we sit there and we draw energy, and it's the focus of an affirmation. We get all our energy behind it, and we outwardly put what we're trying to affirm, and then we go deeper and deeper and deeper until we are basically putting all our focus and energy at the spiritual high. And that is one of the greatest gifts, is the fact that we are awakening that super consciousness from a physical point of view. We're creating new neuro pathways, and if we say it enough, we've created new ones that affirm it in the frontal lobe, and we do all these amazing earthly things. But from a spiritual point of view, we can access this super conscious at any point. We've all got that ability. We can sit and go quiet when our mind's busy and we're tied up in the ego, when we're tied up with the worldly things. We're so busy that we're not quite ready to sit and be still and wait for that right answer. And it's kind of an interesting thing to be in. And one of the things that Swami talks about is that it's when we talk about attuning or coming into that super consciousness, a part of that is not just accepting, but actually having the knowing that we aren't the doers. We're in a part of this play. And the more we resist, you know, the more that bounce and the more we get involved in that up and down path. But the more that we actually allow the flow of God and the needs of what need to happen in our world, the smoother life goes. And one of Swami's talks, he talked about, he said, oh, you know, we have in our world, we have things that we're naturally good at. So we might be naturally artistic, we might be naturally funny, we might be naturally nurturing. We have all these tendencies that come into this play. And sometimes we have these tendencies that become wants and whatever else. And Swami talked about these as being past lives. They talk about being past incarnations where, you know, we might have been an amazing performer. For example, we might have been a musician and we have this ability to perform. And in this lifetime, we've got a tendency to be drawn to, again, that creativity side within music. And then other times, we may have that ability to not want to do it. And Swami talks about that. Sometimes that can be the fact that we've actually succeeded and achieved what we needed to in that realm, and then we've brought it in. And why I say this is all three, we don't know unless we're sort of realized how long we've been attuning, or we don't know what our past lives are involved. All we know in this life is we have these likes and dislikes. We can do something and, you know, like we might all go out to dinner and there's some people that, you know, love tomato-based pastas or pizzas, and others that are like, whoa, no, I can't do that. I like the creamier based pastas and pizzas. We don't know what that relationship has been like. And the more we resist it, the more that we are fighting the ebb and flow of how life needs to be. And it's such an amazing thing, you know. I love Swami's visual, you know, here we are on this mud ball of a planet called Earth with the billions of people that live upon it, and we're this one tiny soul in the whole of this universe, and we still think we're in control. And to me, it's one of those things that I often have to pull myself back when I'm, tied up with work or tied up with doing things, and say, I actually have no control over this. Like, there is nothing that I can have control over. And, it's like, we take control over those little things that we feel we can, like, what am I going to have for breakfast? Or, what am I going to do for dinner tonight? Or what activities are we going to do today? But really, in the great scheme of things, it's all irrelevant, isn't it? We have this lifetimes of things that we've had to achieve or not achieve, and we've bought into this one, and we all know together that just the fact that we want to find God means that we've lived many lifetimes and have a realization that we have a connection with but now we have to learn to live in the knowing that God is in our lives, and we have that ability to always be seated and centered in that time. And that's that point where we live in the presence of God. And again, we're just so blessed in many ways that we have these great masters, gurus, teachings, the science, the connectivity between the East and the West, and all this ability to move forward and live in this amazing way, but always have that ability to connect and be the life within us. We have this soul we can attune to, and that soul, if we visualize it, is that gas along the fire flame. It's the gas that's lining to us. We have access to all of that. We just got to stop moving in the other direction and start attuning in and feeling that soul connection there. And speaking of that, we're all wishing that Kalamali would turn up and share her amazing wisdom.
Well, talk about unexpected, going with the flow. Just, your child wakes up and they're ill, and there you have it. So we got her settled. And one of the things that I really love about this topic when it comes up each year is it's such an important reminder of who do we put our trust in the world? Because the little self, is Maya. That's kind of us in this manifestation. And the bigger self, the higher self, is the soul. And even today, Artie was saying, Mom, will I not be good for my birthday? I'm going to be sick for my birthday. And we talked about how her soul is always well, like Swamiji reminded us in every opportunity. He said, no, I'm excellent. I have not yet succeeded. He's always positively affirming the truth of the soul, which is well, which is light, which is joy. And so we were talking a bit about how to attune to that wellness and light, to feel more and more that the reality is wellness, is she's doing great. And so one of the neat things that is this really lined up with Davey's Touch of Light blog this week. And she actually mentioned Pru's next book, which we all remember Pru, who comes and chats with us. We should have him again. His next book is called The Physics of Miraculous Healing. And it talks a lot about the power of the mind, but really it's the higher self. So he takes it a step beyond that. And what's out there in, mainstream is a lot about the mind's power. But this is the soul power, which in healing, we know sometimes for our soul's growth, it's not always what we think is needed. There's our little self is relying on what it would like, whereas the higher self is relying on God's lessons. And so sometimes it's important to call on that soul knowledge, which is, no, I really love meditating, long, deep meditations. Whereas the little self is like, time to go. I have other things to do. And then you have the higher self that loves to have compassion, loves to have humor and lightness, and loves to play, and all of those things that bring the energy inward and upward. And when we lose our faith in our daily life, Do you feel like we might go contraction, or do you feel we might expand? What do you think?
Well, I think most people would go into contraction.
Yeah. Faith is such an important part of acceptance, contentment, all of those, the Patanjali's yamas and niyamas, truth, all of those things that faith is stemming from are the aspects in how we live. So one of these quotes I read when doing the meditation teacher training with Diksha, she had a quote, "If you feel worry, you do not have faith." And I thought that's such a simple way of putting it, because we're relying on the little self. I'm not going to make my rent. I've got to do this and this and this and this. Have you ever done the opposite and just practice every time you have something coming up that you think you have to rely on just little you, but you instead bring in God, and things just start to magically find solutions or become fixed? We had this weird time in our life where I think we lost like all sense of we're in charge of anything. One of them was coming to Australia, but another one was just, having to shift where we were in the house in Otford to then going into an apartment. But things that we had needed to shift energy in, nothing was working. And then as soon as we said, well, I guess our only option is to move to that apartment by the beach, where you grew up and even lived when you were little. And then it was like, boom, 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 boom. All these things just started going, and we just looked at each other and said, haha, we thought for a second we might have some control over what's going to happen next. So, and then it makes you laugh when you realize the truth of it. And so every time that you're faced with that feeling like, I have to fix this is a really hard situation, I need to figure this out, just remember to bring God into it and have that, exercise your faith, put it to practice, experience it in the laboratory of your own life. And then you'll start to notice that God's grace can come into things even more, because you've opened the curtains for that light to come through and shine onto your life. And as a lot of people even here have shared, when you do that, things just start opening up and changing for the better. And it's incredible. It's just an amazing moment in time. And so as we go out into the week, let's try to practice this in our own life circumstances and just feel that we are loved and protected. Read those stories, do anything that you can to help realize this truth within your own being, and then you'll be able to stand unshaken amidst the crash of breaking storms.
And on saying that, I just want to add to what you were saying, is that don't forget that if something comes, and Swami uses this as a great example, he gave his life to SRF. He thought that that was his world.
Yeah.
And he was removed. But when he talks about it, he sits in Ananda and says, at the time, same thing. I thought my world was
falling apart.
And he thought that it was a negative. But then look at the amount of people that he could touch, because God had other plans. So God doesn't always give it in ways that we feel are just, or we feel are, unicorns and rainbows and those kind of things. God will give us what we need, and then we have to accept and stand amidst or stand unshaken amidst the storm. So just to clarify that, and Swami talks about it really, he said, sometimes we can go through health and suffering, and it's what we need. We need to move things. We need to get through what we need to.
Just remember his last word on this earth was anything. Anything, God. Yeah. Give me anything if it's for your love, because everything that comes to us is to help us achieve union.
True freedom.
So thank you. Sorry for being a bit late, and well shared today. Naraji, thank you for that. We have some songs for our sing-along time. If you're